What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Paddy Pimblett sounding off on juicehead TJ Dillashaw. TJ Dillashaw recently made comments about Paddy Pimblett's weight gain in between fights, something that has been a humorous touch point on the Brit's burgeoning UFC career. He even had Paulo Costa joking around about how he should learn how Paddy cuts weight. Dillashaw talks about how this is celebrated, but is a mark on how Paddy is going to be squandering his opportunity. He feels that Paddy will never be a champion because of this. Case in point, in a recent episode of The Shop Show this week, this is what Dillashaw said.
You can't have that downtime like that. You can't get that fat. You can't be out of shape. This is a full-time job, bro. This isn't wanting to be a fighter. Like, you have to be a fighter.
Well, Paddy the Baddy responded to Dillashaw on Twitter, saying this: "Is this fella messin'? TJ Dillashaw used to sell t-shirts with his fat face on it saying Fat Tyler on when he came out of camp. Don't forget your own past, you sausage-cheating little juicehead. Would never have won a belt without them steroids, you f***ing mushroom." Paddy is set to fight the Monkey King himself, Jordan Levitt, at UFC London in July. But what do you make of Dillashaw's comments and Paddy's response? Henry Cejudo outlines the one way to beat Jon Jones. Henry Cejudo has been coaching a who's who of UFC stars and top-tier talent at his